Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So, over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about the fact that if we wish to rebuild a healthy culture, we must focus on conservative ways of doing so and abandon a lot of the liberal ways of thinking that have been ingrained within us over the last minimum 60 years. By the way, if you're wondering, I'll get off of this kick soon. Usually it takes about 3 videos for me to get things out of my system. Anyways, I've been talking about how a lot of people in this cultural space where I am, which have criticized far left attempts at making culture and entertainment over the last number of years, say about 15, how they indeed are not actually on the right, how they're on the left, and how the basis of their ideas is not going to lead to good culture. And I've also included in other videos over the last couple of weeks other arguments of that kind. And I had a very interesting comment on the last video that I did. And that comment was, this is why the right always loses. As soon as they gain any kind of power, they start to purity test and then purity spiral, and they just lose control and the left will dominate. And in thinking about that comment, I realized why the person probably has that mentality. Because again, we're stuck in a liberal interpretation of how to see things for the last 60 years, and that liberal interpretation always sees purity as a negative thing. But quite honestly, purity is not always a negative thing. And quite honestly, if you have been, as this channel has been, and many other channels like mine, advocating for a system of merit over the last couple of years so that we can have better entertainment, good entertainment again, and good cultural institutions besides that, systems of merit are systems of purity. And that's what I'm going to go into today. But before I get there, I just want to let everybody know that I have set up the sign up page for my next book that is coming out. It's called Fade to Blue. It's basically a combination of film noir and Indiana Jones. The link for the sign up sheet is in the description of this video and on the pinned comment. You go over there and you leave your email address and you will be informed when the project goes live. It's not live yet. It will probably be in about a month. The basic storyline of Fade to Blue is that a common, normal, everyday man who just likes his normal, everyday life gets cursed with the ability to see everything that hides in the shadow. And if you want a more visual interpretation of the story itself, if you go over to the sign-up page, there is a video, a trailer for Fade to Blue. It's about 1 minute and 12 seconds, I believe. So anyway, all of that is in the description and the pinned comment. Go on over there and sign up for Fade to Blue today so that you won't miss out when we go live. Also, there are links in the description for my other graphic novels. Anyway, back to our topic. So here's where I'll enter into this entire discussion. The thing is that I am critical of the other people, a lot of the other people that are in this space, because they're not actually looking for something conservative. They're not actually looking for something that is on the right hand of the aisle. They're looking at the very minimum, center left. And what that is doing is they're calling for a system of merit, which again is a system of purity, which I'll go into. And I'll try to go into less philosophical and more down to earth and some scientific ways of looking at this when I discuss it over this video. But they're asking for a system of purity without having to engage in the concept of purity itself. And I'm sorry, but you can't have both. And again, the reason why they want to do this is because they're on the left. There was an interesting thing that people were talking about 2 years ago. I don't have the graphic for it in the background. I couldn't find it. I looked for it. But if after hearing what I'm going to describe, you know where the graphic is, please post it in the comments. But anyway, it was basically a survey that was breaking down society into its 5 essential pillars. And then they asked people on the left and on the right which of those pillars that they would support. And the funny thing was that people on the left would typically support only 3 of these pillars, and one above all else, which was fairness. Whereas the people on the right would support all 5 pillars and try to basically even out their support of each of them. And one of those pillars on the right, one of those pillars that the left did not even touch, was the pillar of purity. Now it's represented as different things in different forms of this survey or representations of this survey. I usually just break these 5 pillars down to essentially the virtues themselves. And that pillar of so-called purity would just be temperance, because temperance contains within it an idea of purity, because temperance is supposed to take the rest of the virtues and reorder them so that they all work together in the correct fashion, working directly through the ideas of right reason, which again, right reason is how do things exist within reality? How do things exist objectively? That's a purity standard. But again, the point is, a lot of these people who are definitely on the left are calling for a system of merit, but don't want to engage with the idea of purity because they're on the left. And the farther you are on the left, the less you're going to even consider purity as one of the underlying pillars of a good society. And this is also one of the reasons why a lot of people think that the left is eventually always going to win, because simply they concentrate all of their power on 3 parts of society. They don't distribute it among 5, and since conservatives distributed their power in a less concentrated way than the left, with their concentrated power on the 3 they see as essentials of society, which are the only ones that you need, the top of which is fairness, or as they might call it, equity. The belief is that with that concentration of power, they're always going to wipe the floor with the people on the right. But that's not entirely the case. It might be the case for a little while. It might be the case because we're so steeped in liberal ideas that we can't actually think in a conservative way. But in the end, that's not going to happen. Why? Well, because in the end, when you ignore things like purity, you can't actually build culture. If you're trying to build a culture, a society, and what we talk about here, in part, is culture war issues, if you're trying to build a society, building it with 3 out of 5 legs is going to make it much less stable than if you use 5 legs. 5 pillars, as sometimes they're called, in order to hold the thing up. Now let's tackle 2 issues at once. Some people might be saying, yes, the left is concerned with purity. They're always purity-shaming people. Well, I would say, A, they're not really concerned with purity. They're concerned with control. But if you want to break it down and call it purity, I would say there's a positive and a negative aspect to purity. And they're focusing on the negative aspect of purity, that is, purity as control. Whereas the right-hand side is focusing on purity as a system of competition. And that's why I don't agree with that comment that the right is now purity spiraling, because again, I think that person is simply looking at purity only through a left-wing lens, which is to say that purity is always about control. But it's not always about control. Purity can be about competition, and that's what a system of merit is. That's what people have been calling for. If you want a free market of ideas, that's a purity system. If you want merit within your entertainment, you're asking for a purity system. It doesn't matter if you're asking for a good story, asking for the person who gets hired to tell stories to actually be a good storyteller. That's a purity system. That's a system of merit. And likewise, if you're asking for good editing, if you're asking for an adherence to continuity, if you're asking for some devotion to the history of this story or collection of stories, even if you're asking for beautiful women within your comic books, television, movies, games, you're asking for a system of merit. You're asking for a system of purity. And this is because of what I talked about last week. Because the left is concentrated on power, the right is concentrated on truth. Purity is a good thing when you enter truth into it. This goes back to the thing I'm always talking about, Plato's definition of honor. He says, honor consists in following the better, and in doing our utmost to effect the betterment of the worse when it admits of being bettered. So what is he doing? He's setting up a system whereby you can make worse things better. And the only way that you can make worse things better is if you know what better is. And the only way that you know what better is to have constructed within your mind a system of good, better, best. And not just in your mind, but in your mind as a reflection of what is objectively good, better, best. And the things that are better are the things which, when you take your scale of good, better, best, you hook on to the best, which is truth, which is reality, because reality is encompassed under the umbrella of truth. So you take your measurement, you take your tape measure, and you hook it onto the truth, and you measure downwards to see which of the 2 competing ideas, competing things, competing people are closer to the truth. Whichever one is closer to the truth is the one that embodies more of the attributes of what is true, of what is good, of what is best. If they incorporate within themselves more of the attributes of what is best, then that is a way of saying that they are incorporating in a more pure way the attributes of what is best. It is literally a purity test when you're looking at a system of merit. You simply have to acknowledge, first of all, there is objective truth. We can know it, and we can use it to scale everything and find out what is good, better, and best. And again, it is literally a purity test to see which one is purer as concerns how it is compared to what is best. Every system of merit is literally a purity test. And the reason why I'm so down on other people who are center-left, while at the same time calling for a system of merit, is the fact that any true system of merit can only work if it is a purity test to see which one is best. Yet they do not wish to interact or even acknowledge that we can concentrate on purity, or that purity can be a good thing. By the way, yes, I'm fully aware that I probably sound eerily like that guy, the crazy general from Dr. Zhivago, who keeps on going on about purity of essence. But anyway, let's look at this, as I said, in a more grounded way. Let's look at what a good story is, how a good story is actually produced. Again, that would incorporate a lot of things like good editing and devotion to continuity, all that kind of stuff. If you're looking for that kind of a story, what you're saying is there's a standard of story which is actually best. And what is that standard of story? Well, I'm always going on about that. That's the logical definition of story that Aristotle came up with within the 4th century BC, again, working from stories that were about 800 years older than him. And no, it's not just a cultural thing. The stories that we concentrate on, in the West anyways, are Aristotelian-based stories. But the reason why we do that is because every form of storytelling that Aristotelian storytelling has bumped up against has been obliterated by the system of merit, the competition of ideas of those other forms of storytelling, and the Aristotelian way of looking at stories. We can see this in European history. I'm always going on about the difference between Greek mythology as compared with Celtic and Norse. What came out on top as a form of storytelling among those three? Well, it was the Greek, which again is the precursor to what Aristotle is describing within a story. And why? Because it's more logical and rational. And so I would say, again, this is not just a cultural thing. It's not just in the West as well. Compare the logical and rational definition of what a story is in an Aristotelian way, which is to say what is the best form of storytelling, to other forms of storytelling in other parts of the world, and the Aristotelian rational, logical form will destroy them. Why? Because it works with how human beings work and how reality works. And quite literally, it's the exact same process if you're asking for beautiful women within your comics, within your television, movies, games. The same process is playing out. It actually might be a better way of explaining the entire thing, so let me do that. Let's look at this almost purely scientifically. Now, I could explain this entire thing according to theology, philosophy, history, tradition, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna just look at the scientific. But the scientific says the exact same thing as the rest. What is the reason why we call something beautiful? And if we're using the standard of this thing is beautiful, we are indeed saying this thing is best. Why do we actually see something as beautiful? Well, because as human beings, again, just focusing on the natural world, as human beings, we're pattern recognition machines. That's what we are. And as pattern recognition machines, we look for symmetry. Why? Because things that are symmetrical, and that would incorporate other subsections like being proportional, things like that, but things that are symmetrical are easier for our pattern recognition brain to understand, and if we can understand it faster, we know whether or not it's a threat. Pure and simple. So our brain sees something which is symmetrical, we understand it quicker than understanding something that is asymmetrical. We say, okay, I can understand that right off the bat. I know it's not a threat to me, therefore it is something that pleases me. I call it beautiful. And our brains are literally hardwired in order to pick out things and say, this is beautiful, this is not. And again, I would say this is just one of the many facets of this entire thing. I think that it is incorporated into our mind, body, and soul. But again, we're just looking at the natural, just looking at the body. So yeah, we want to see symmetrical things. They are classified as beautiful. Beautiful is classified as best. And oh, by the way, this is why the opposite of beautiful is grotesque. The definition, if you look at the origin of the definition of grotesque, it is misshapen. That's what grotesque means. It's misshapen, that is to say, asymmetrical. And so, if you're doing something as mundane as saying, I want to look at beautiful women when I'm reading my comics, watching my television, movies, playing my video games, you're asking for a system of merit, a system where we can say, this is beautiful, this is not. We have reasons. Again, this is the scientific reason, but also cultural, philosophical, historical, theological, that can back up the entire thing. But no, we say this is beautiful, this is not. It is a system of merit, a system of purity to see which things that we present are more symmetrical. The more symmetrical are labeled as the more beautiful. So again, objective standards. Objective standards we use and compare things to see which one has more pure concentration of the attributes of the standard of what is best. And so it is with the construction of a story. So it is with asking for editors. So it is with asking for continuity. So it is with asking for devotion to what the story is about. All of it is the same. And it explains why you can't use left-wing ideas in order to actually build culture. Because they're not concerned with purity at all. Or at the very least, if they are concerned with any concept of purity, it is simply purity as a system of control, not as a system of competition. By the way, this is basically what they used to talk about on all those Marvel podcasts that I'd listen to when they would talk about feminism. They would talk about the different forms of power, how female power was called empowerment and it was positive in their eyes, and male power was called power and it is negative. And why would they label male power as negative, as evil? Well, because it was based on competition. And they can't have competition. Competition is a purity test to see which one is best. No, they needed to concentrate on fairness, on equity, and allowing marginalized groups to have their time to shine in the sun. But anyway, let's take a different tack at looking at this entire thing, and again, bring in some grounded material in order to prove these points. What we're talking about here, once again, is cultural issue. And the left doesn't want to build culture. They can't build culture. Why? Again, because they use purity simply in a controlling sense, not in a creative sense, which again, competition is a creative sense. And the thing is about culture, culture is built upon what emerges from the collective being together, the collective of humanity, or what we would call society. And the thing is that left-wing ideas and left-wing people can't build society. Once again, they can control it, but they can't build it. And once again, I could discuss this entire thing philosophically, theologically, it doesn't matter. But let's look at it according to a recent study that was conducted, which you've probably seen floating around the internet. It's this graph showing the difference between what people on the right see as valuable and what people on the left see as valuable. Now, if you're just listening to me and not looking at the screen, I'll describe it just briefly. What is being shown here is two different heat maps. The study conducted was to ask people about various things and ask them what their political affiliation was, and then to get them to label on a scale what they considered most important. The scale is as follows. Number 1, all of your immediate family. Number 2, all of your extended family. Number 3, all of your closest friends. Number 4, all of your friends, including distant ones. Number 5, all of your acquaintances. Number 6, all people you have ever met. Number 7, all people in your country. Number 8, all people on your continent. Number 9, all people on all continents. Number 10, all mammals. Number 11, all amphibians, reptiles, mammals, fish, and birds. Number 12, all animals on Earth, including paramecia and amoeba. Number 13, all animals in the universe, including alien life forms. Number 14, all living things in the universe, including plants and trees. Number 15, all natural things in the universe, including inert entities such as rocks. Number 16, all things in existence. So on the right-hand side of the spectrum for conservatives, it listed literally as conservatives, they are concentrated mostly on either number 3 or number 4. 3 is all of your closest friends. 4 is all of your friends, including distant ones. So of course, around that, the hottest areas around those centers are 1, 2, 5, and 6, being all of your immediate family, all of your extended family, which is 1 and 2, and 5 and 6 being all of your acquaintances and all people you have ever met. But for the left-hand side of the spectrum, which it says it labels as liberals, what they're concentrated on is number 14. Number 14 being, of course, all living things in the universe, including plants and trees, which is surrounded by 12, 13, 15, and 16. They are the secondary highest heat on this heat map, and they include 12, all animals on Earth, including paramecia and amoeba. Number 13, all animals in the universe, including alien life forms. Number 15, all natural things in the universe, including inert entities such as rocks. And number 16, all things in existence. So, liberals literally value rocks and animals, even if they're alien life forms, above their own families. Far and above their own families. And again, if we take everything around each of those, people on the left, liberals, and again, that's not me labeling it this, it is the people who conducted this study labeling it liberals. Liberals are more concentrated on valuing inanimate things, animals, plants, trees, things way off in the universe, more than any people at all. By the way, does this now make sense why you have these people on the left who are what we would call radical environmentalists, saying things like, I don't care if the entire human race gets wiped out as long as the planet survives. Does it make sense why you have these people on the left who are pushing for things that you know are going to cause a tremendous amount of suffering in humanity and destruction of culture and society, and they don't care? They don't care because they don't care about people. They care about rocks and trees. This is also why you would get ridiculous stories, like the one that you got in X-Men Green, where you had this character who was portrayed as the hero literally slitting the throat of a store manager because one of the bags from his store got caught in the throat of a sea turtle and then killed it. And she was supposedly justified in doing this. And her sidekick, who was just a little kid, looked on in glee as she set on fire a group of refinery workers, literally killing them, burning them to death. Why? Because they're harming the planet. And of course, they tried to say, oh, no, we'll take them back to Krakoa, which is the mutant island. And they had a trial and they said, you did wrong. But then at the end, the island of Krakoa itself, which was a representation of the Earth because it is a living island as part of the planet, said, I'm going to let you go. You didn't actually do anything wrong. Can you see why they write such stories? Can you see why they have such a mentality if this is how they think? But to my point here is that, can you see why they can't build culture? Can you see why they can't maintain societies? Because they don't care about people. They care about rocks and trees and things that exist in the universe. And if you don't care about people, how in the world are you going to build a good society? Conservatives build a good society and build good culture off of those societies because they're concentrated on the people around them. This is the order of mores that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, about the fact that you concentrate on those people around you. You value them the most, and then it goes out in concentric circles from there. This, by the way, is the left ignoring one of the essential things that has been hammered home in philosophy, history, theology, culture, since the beginning of written history, which is the fact that human beings are social animals. We build societies. And if you want to build a society that actually works and flourishes, you're gonna have to concentrate on the interaction of people. But if you're not concentrated on people at all, how in the world are you gonna do that? Well, you're not gonna do that. That's why they can't build society. That's why they can't build culture off of society. And also, before someone in the comments says, well, this is just a different way of looking at things, the so-called liberals on this chart are not doing anything wrong. They're just looking at life according to different standards than conservatives. I'm sorry, no. Let's bring the scientific into this once again. Science has proven in its studies over the last 10, 20 years especially, that yes, mankind is a social creature. Why? Because your body literally produces chemicals which are called bonding chemicals to bond you to other people. They're supposed to bond you firstly to your mother, then to your father, then to the rest of your family, then to the people in your extended family, then to the people around you, your friends. Literally, your body produces these chemicals to bond you to the people around you. And if your body, for some reason, and we can see that reason around us in the mental illness that has run rampant throughout our society. But if for some reason your body cannot produce these chemicals in the correct fashion and have you use them in the correct fashion, what does it do? Well, it impacts quite negatively your health, and not just your mental health, but your bodily health as well. Or to put it in another form, they have found that people who use these bonding chemicals in the natural way that our body wants to produce them actually live longer. So yeah, let's just look at it scientifically. We are a social animal. Our body produces chemicals to make us into social animals, and that's how we flourish the best. But liberal ideas, liberal values are values which are concentrated on things that are not human. And in concentrating on things that are not human, they don't have really very good, if any, grasp on the true way that human beings interact, on the reality of it and how we interact with the things around us, let alone other people. And so it brings them in this mindset to try to construct societies, as I was talking about earlier, concentrating on only 3 different pillars of society in a very unbalanced way, as opposed to incorporating in a temperate way all 5, which allow you to build a stable society, which then again allows you to build off of that culture. And as I pointed out at the first, we're talking about building it in a temperate way. Temperance includes the idea of purity, the idea that some ideas actually, as I said last week, should be swept away. Some ideas should die because they have no merit, because all we need to do is look at how reality works, what is best, how things actually play out according to what allows them to flourish, compare the ideas to those standards, see if they incorporate in any kind of pure form those standards, and if they don't, then they're cast aside for better ideas, for better ways of living, for better ways of thinking. They are cast aside for what actually works. And this all boils down to one simple point. It is easy to condemn what the people on the conservative side are doing now because they're not getting results fast enough. Well, they're not getting results fast enough because you're used to a left-wing liberal society which does nothing but control or destroy. And control and destroying is actually quite quick, especially as compared with building something. To build something takes time. It takes effort. It takes concentration of resources, one upon another. And that's dull and mundane for most people. That is, I don't want to have to go through all of that. I want the quick and easy. Well, I'm sorry. Virtue, which is to say, in its mechanical sense, the power to accomplish your ends, doesn't come quick and easy. But what it does do is produce heroic societies and a heroic life. So, if I've given you anything new to think of, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. And don't forget, the sign-up page for Fade to Blue is now open. Link for it is in the description. You're looking at some of the beautiful art from Fade to Blue in the background. Yes, it is going to be a black and white book with some splashes of blue. Fade to Blue, by the way, is a play on both fade to black and also fade, which is used as a, double entendre here because we're also playing on light and shadow, but fade also means to some extent fairy-like, which is to say otherworldly. Anyway, link for that sign-up sheet is in the description and the pinned comment. Go on over and leave your email so that I can inform you via email when the project goes live. And if you have a mind to, click on those other links to go on over and see if any of my other graphic novels appeal to you at all, which if they do, you can go on over and order a copy today. All right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you later. Bye.